What if I told you that the reason you're not reaching your full potential isn't because you're lazy or untalented, but because you just don't understand how your mind works? Imagine being able to lock in and perform at your absolute best, like time itself slows down and everything just clicks. Well, in Blue Lock, Ego introduces a real world concept called flow. The state where you're so locked into a task that you perform beyond your normal limits. But here's the thing, flow isn't random, and knowing your ego type may just be the missing key to unlocking it for you. And that's why in today's video, we're breaking down how these ego types help us determine what truly motivates you, the best environment for you to actually thrive in, and how combining these two unlocks your unique path to flow. Now, you've probably tried setting goals before. Maybe you wanted to get in shape, focus on your studies, or even get better at gaming. But no matter how hard you try, something always just seems off. You struggle to stay consistent, and after a while, you start losing motivation. Well, here's the problem. You're actually chasing down the wrong goals. And the problem isn't because you're too lazy or anything like that. It's just that you don't really know what truly drives you. See, in Blue Lock, Izuki comes up with a theory and divides players into the world type and self-type egoists. And understanding this difference is the first step to unlocking your personal flow. So first, let's talk about the world types. Now, often these guys are driven by things like status, achievement, and external validation. Basically, all the things that the world tends to deem important. And not only that, they're willing to adapt, make changes, and overall just do whatever it takes in order to accomplish these goals. And a few examples I have of this are, of course, our main character Izuki and his main rival now, Kaiser. Both have goals that the world places value on. For Izuki, it's being number one in the NEL to prove that he is the best striker in Blue Lock and eventually the world. And as for Kaiser, it's more or less just proving to the world that he deserves to live, that he deserves to be where he is now. On the flip side of this, we have the self types who generally chase goals for their personal enjoyment and self-expression. Then not only that, they refuse to change for some type of external success like the world types. They value staying true to themselves no matter what. And the two prominent examples of this type are Baro and Cheeto, both who play their way with no compromises. Baro being the villainous king who only wants to win with his own goals, and Cheeto who doesn't really care about anything else but leaving his mark on the world through his goals. Now, the key here is to enter flow, you need to stop forcing yourself into goals that don't really align with who you are. If you're a world type, give yourself external challenges like leaderboards, competitions, or some type of public milestone. If you're a self-type, find goals that excite you from within, ones where the process itself just feels rewarding. And once you start setting your goals the right way, based on your ego type, then your motivation is just going to skyrocket. Now, even when you set the right goals, staying focused is still a struggle. Maybe you get bored easily jumping from one thing to another, or maybe you just can't focus unless there's some type of pressure, like a deadline breathing down your neck. Either way, you just keep asking yourself, why can't I just lock in and get this done? Well, that's because not everyone performs their best under the same conditions. In Blue Lock, Izuki notices that players thrive in different environments, and these can fall into two different categories: freedom and restriction. First, let's talk about freedom types. Now, these types are people who thrive in conditions where they're allowed to express their freedom and creativity. They also need flexibility and variety to stay engaged with the task at hand. And they normally hate rigid routines and performs their best when they're allowed to experiment. One interesting example of the freedom type is Bachira, whose instinctive dribbling style often allows him to make up moves on the spot, and he thrives when he's allowed to express his creativity this way. Now, on the other side of that, we have restriction types, people who often need some clear objectives and structure in order for them to thrive. And whether that's them faithfully accomplishing these goals and objectives, or for those who like to thrive going against the grain and be more like rebels, both follow under this ego type. And generally speaking, they work best under pressure, where high stakes force them to really put on their best face, and they look for obstacles to either overcome or just to remove outright. A prime example of this is Rin, Isagi's main rival throughout the series. Rin often performs at his peak when he's facing the pressure that those better than him create, like his brother Asai or now Isagi. Now, the key to understand here is that you keep losing focus because you haven't designed your environment for the way your brain works. If you're a freedom type, then do your best to remove rigid schedules and allow yourself space to explore and to get creative. If you're a restriction type, then do the opposite. Give yourself strict time limits and clear rules to follow to bring out your best performance. And when you set up your ideal conditions correctly, then flow stops becoming a struggle. It becomes, well, effortless. Okay, now you know what drives you and how you work your best. But when it comes time to actually execute, you still don't feel like you're quite in the zone. You're still inconsistent, struggling to recreate those rare moments when everything clicks. That's because flow is about aligning your goal with your environment to create something that's repeatable for you. In Blue Lock, players combine their world or self styles and their freedom or restriction types into 4 unique ego types that Isagi came up with. And if you don't know which one you are, then you're honestly never going to be able to bring out your peak performance. First up are the world and freedom types. They're generally seen as strategic and adaptive thinkers. They like to read the situation at hand and adjust their strategies on the fly based on the data that they're given. And they operate the best when they have options to analyze and are able to pick the optimal path towards their goal. And of course, the poster boy for this is the main character, Isagi himself, who normally optimizes his choices every second to give himself the best chance to succeed and score his goal. So the flow tip for this style is to create multiple ways to win so you can pivot when needed. Next up are the world plus restriction types, those who are pretty much focused and tactical executors. They like to lock onto a goal and work relentlessly towards it, using whatever they can to get the job done. And they operate the best with a clear target in mind and strict focus. Example for this type is Kaiser, who, after dropping his fixation on Isagi, gave him more options while thriving in the pressure that Isagi's creating. Now, the flow tip for this style is to set clear, time-limited challenges and try to explore multiple ways on how to succeed. After that, we have the self plus freedom types, those who are seen as more instinctive and creative performers. They really need room to explore their creativity in the moment, and they operate the best when enjoying the process of exploring their own passions and creativity to accomplish their goals. The main example for this is my boy Shido, who just plays by pure instinct, making the impossible, well, possible. So the flow tip for this type is to remove external pressure and create space for experimentation. And last but not least are the self plus restriction types, those who are seen as obsessive and goal-driven competitors. They like to participate in battles where they can honestly just prove themselves. And they operate the best in high pressure environments with clear goals that allow them to stay true to who they are, regardless if that means going with the rules or straight out going against them. And I think the clearest example of this type is Baro, who enters flow when he dominates the field with his obsession to devour Isagi's light. Now, the flow tip for this style is to find high-stake environments where you can just go all in. And the key thing to understand here is that you're struggling with consistency because you haven't built your ideal flow formula. So once you align your goal type, whether that's a world or self style, with your ideal environment, whether that's in freedom or restriction, then flow stops becoming random. It becomes repeatable. Now, flow isn't just about working harder, it's about working smarter. When you know what motivates you and how you thrive, you can design your life around your peak performance. And if you want to dive deeper into understanding your own strengths, then check out this video on talented learners versus geniuses in order to figure out the best way for you to use your skills.